Connor.
Hey, Richard, how are you?
Hey, good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, very well. How's things?
Yeah, well, thank you.
That's
Where are
good.
you? Whereabouts? You in Townsville? Or?
Yeah, I'm up in Townsville. Shane's in New South Wales. Joe's in Townsville. James is in Townsville. Looks like everyone's here.
There's a lot of Townsville.
Mate, the good country, the good country.
The place to be. How are you, Doc?
I'm good, thank you. I'm just wondering if I've got teenage boys loitering around behind me, so I'm just wondering if I should stick a photo up, but I've threatened them with no dessert if they annoy me, so we'll see how we go.
I don't think it's any concern, Joe. My kids have already gone to bed.
That would be good.
Fantastic.
Jane?
How are we?
Yeah, good, mate. How's things down there?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Good change?
Good change. Northern New South Wales is beautiful.
Yeah.
It's Trish. Trish, can you grab me some water?
Still occasionally we're a little bit on the 3G network down in Northern New South Wales, so apologies if there's any bit of a delay there at times.
Yeah, good.
Just started getting people rolling in by the looks of it.
I'm going to have to move down this one.
So don't say anything bad about Judah, Shane. He's watching.
He's watching. Oh, there's...
Okay, thank you.
Joe's got his whole boardroom going.
That's what I was thinking. He's ready to go.
Very well played.
You can see me now, Connor?
Yeah, mate, that's a big flex right there. I like that.
I was just trying to hide my gut. That's all I was doing.
Oh, nice.
Hey, James and Richard, how are you?
Well, thank you.
Dr. Joe, how are you this evening? She's not responding.
No, sorry, I had a feeling you were saying hello to me then, darling, but everything just froze for me.
You need to pay your tech bill at home, pay your phone bill, get some decent tech.
So we're just
Absolutely.
waiting on Dave.
I'll drive over there.
Connor, you sent me some homework to do. I haven't done it yet. Is that a bad thing?
Look, mate, you had a fair bit of time. Nah, kidding. It's all right. I'm sure it's all right. I had some questions for you, but it'll just have to go off the cuff instead. What do you reckon?
I reckon you should start with someone else first. I like the third. Well, I'm not sure about the third one. I'll have to ask my wife about that one.
That's all right. I'm sure she'll have a good answer for you. She'll cover for you, mate. She'll cover for you.
We may have mixed some of those questions up a little bit as well, just to just to throw a few curveballs. Hey, Dave, welcome. Got him?
How's the is it raining down New South Wales, Shane?
It has been. Today was nice, but it's been wet the last 3 or 4 days. We're having a little bit of stuff done on the house at the moment, so anytime it rains, it puts the tradies back a couple of days, and anytime the surf's big, it puts the tradies back a couple of days down here. So if it remains hot and flat out in the ocean, I'm pretty happy down here at the moment.
I forget about the surf days. It's like it's like sick allowance, really, isn't it? You need surf day allowance.
Oh, it's amazing. Just a different way of life, but yeah, it's all good. We're happy. We've adapted.
We'll just wait for a few more people to roll in.
Perfect. How are you, Dave? Can you hear us?
And Shane.
Yes, perfect. Wonderful. How you been?
Good, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we've got you well now. I think that's
I'm a big admirer of Joe's boardroom down there.
yeah, it's
Thanks. Hey, Dave Lewis. Lewis, get up, mate. How are you, mate?
Very good, thank you.
Fantastic. Mate, there is a problem with your screen. I'm a bit concerned. It's a bit blurry. The imagery in the background looks a bit off. You might have to just change your camera around a little bit and remove that background.
I'll just shuffle across. Right. I didn't mean to rub it in.
A little bit, mate. Yeah, you can get wallpaper that will fix that up. On the screen.
No, that is from 17, so sorry, mate.
Yeah.
yeah. So I can sense a bit of tension in the room in that one. We'll get to that a bit later.
A 4X gold or a brick lane won't sort.
All right, Connor, you reckon we can get this started?
I reckon we get cracking.
Perfect. All right. I'll get the ball rolling here. So, good evening, everyone, or everyone here on the panel and those viewing from home. I'm very excited to unravel, I guess, this evening's event in what is Men's Health Week. I think it's a great week. We're doing a lot of stuff in the business over the whole month, but this week it's really good to put an emphasis on men's health and what it is, and just I guess for us have an open discussion about it. So for me, I'm very mindful of how valuable everyone's time is here. So I do appreciate you volunteering your time, experiences, opinions, and whatnot. So it is, I must say in advance, we're very appreciative of you guys all coming on. Just quickly for those viewing at home, so my name is Shane Brown. I'm the director of the Physio Movement. And Connor, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Connor. I look after the Townsville branch of the Physio Movement, basically.
Perfect. Okay, so now I just wanted to formally introduce our speakers, and I'll keep the introductions short, just because if I listed all the accomplishments and accolades, we wouldn't have much time to actually talk men's health. So we've got a very well-rounded and overqualified group of people. So I'm very interested to hear some differing opinions on it. So just as myself and Connor go through the introductions, I was hoping that we could get each of our panelists to just very briefly describe what men's health means to them. And when I ask that question, I think just a couple of words to a sentence, just keep it really brief on what men's health means to them, because we all have such differing views and opinions of the issues. So I'll go first one out of the blocks. I'll go Richard. That's a pretty bad pun I just got in there, isn't it? But so Richard, yeah. I've met Richard once or twice when he actually has brought some swimmers up to Townsville to sort of train in a different environment. So now correct me on anything here, Richard, but Australian swim coach since 2013, head coach of Bond Uni and previously PBC on the Gold Coast.
Yep, that's right.
And I've just got here a big driving force behind the success of both those clubs on moving up rankings, and really, it's really good to have you on board. We'll go into a bit, no problems. And just, I guess, your take on what men's health is.
Oh, look, I think, of course, the swimmers all have their goals and that's their aspirations and that sort of thing. But just having them as well-rounded men, I think probably in the end. When all the swimming is said and done, they enjoy their time training with me and their success, and able to move on into their adult life or their careers with no real problems there. So that's what it means to me. Yeah,
good, excellent, wonderful. Well, I've got I had one or two questions for you later on about what happens after the swimming finishes, which there's been some well publicized stuff over the past few years. Won't delve into that too much, but just when that professional life finishes as an athlete and begins a new chapter. So we'll talk more about that.
sure.
Next, we've got James Jensen. How are you?
Hello.
Perfect.
Thank you
Now,
for having me.
James, no problems at all. So we're really excited to have James on board to give a different perspective on sort of some of these issues around men's health. So James is the owner of ANC, which is the Australian Nutrition Centre, a pharmacist and a natural medicine practitioner. So really excited to get your opinions, because for me, I feel they may differ between us, not you and I, but between all the panelists.
Yeah, sure.
I guess your take just briefly on what men's health is?
Yeah, well, I guess if it's any sort of example, I would say 90% of my patients are women. So, I suppose that speaks volumes, but, I think men typically don't, talk about health much themselves. And I would say they've got a pretty poor self-awareness of health and what it means to be healthy, certainly compared to women. Yeah.
Okay, good. Perfect. Connor, over to you.
So I'm pretty lucky I get to introduce both who are affectionately known as Big Joe and Little Joe. So we'll start off with Big Joe. When I asked Big Joe for a bit of a bio, he actually sent through Big Dumb Farmer. I think his words were so, but it's definitely anything other than that. So Joe is the director of the Carey group here in Townsville. He's also the director and deputy chairman of the Cowboys Leagues Club and the Cowboys Football Club. And he's also the director of Townsville Enterprise as well, if I'm correct. So Joe, he's pretty passionate about what he does. His firm is a pretty ethical approach as well, and they're highly regarded for that. So thanks for joining us, Joe. What's your take on men's health?
Oh, look, firstly, Connor and Shane, thank you for having the opportunity to speak this evening, and appreciate the time and opportunity. As you know, Connor, I'm a farm boy, so background for me from a point of view of men's health, it's probably changed over time. In the younger years, men's health really didn't have a huge meaning to me because I spent most of my days just working. I didn't really put your health first. But I guess in my professional career, what I've really come to become aware of is that there is a strong link between health, well-being, and success, whatever shape or form you determine success to be. I think it's actually critical, having not only a physically healthy body, but also a physically healthy mind. So for me, men's health is part of a holistic approach to, well-being and trying to be the best you can, whether that be in your private life or your business life.
Fantastic. Awesome.
So in a summary, that's it. Thanks, Connor.
That's great. That's a good summary. I like it. Awesome. Shane, over to you.
All right. Next we've got Dave Donaghy. Dave's current CEO of the Melbourne Storm and has been since 2015. During this time, he's led the club to amazing success both on and off the field. 3 consecutive grand finals. A premiership in 2017 over who did you beat in that year, Dave?
I forget, Shane.
Okay.
It was a very close game, Shane.
Okay, all right. I'm just
Probably not for this audience, Shane.
okay. Well, if it's, I'm still a Raiders supporter, so if it breaks anyone, like if anyone needs to be niggled, it's probably me for last year, so that's fine. I can wear that. Now, along with that great success during Dave's time as CEO, the membership base from Melbourne Storm's gone from 15,000 to 25,000, and a revenue growth from 23 to 52 million. So I think what Dave's been a part of with the Melbourne Storm has been pretty amazing. Before that, he's spent some time with the Brisbane Lions as GM in communications and stakeholder engagement, and also done some previous time with the Melbourne Storm as well. Very brief summary there. But Dave, what's your take on men's health?
Yeah, and again, just further to Joe, thanks Shane and Connor for having me all the way from Melbourne. Look, I think everyone's touched on some really relevant points, but I think in especially the line of work that I'm in is that there's a real macho culture at times that can exist, particularly given the game that we that we operate in and the competitive nature of it. So for us, we like to try and produce not just well-rounded athletes, but well-rounded people. And, you know, certainly through, you know, the staff that I've got here, and they're very good staff, you know, encouraging our players to show a level of vulnerability, and courage to express that vulnerability is really important, especially when you're tackling some really challenging and at times some sensitive and you know, sensitive topics when it comes to men's health.
Great, thank you. Connor, back to you.
And lastly, we've got Dr. Joe, or Little Joe, our special guest, who she spends her day inside the heads of individuals, teams, and organisations. So she's worked with the Cowboys for a number of years. When did you start? 1996, was it, Joe? With the Cowboys. She's also spent much of her career supporting wellbeing and health initiatives for young men, and delivers programs in resilience and high performance for the Australian Defence Force as well, which I know she's pretty active in nowadays. She's also recently written her first book, which was The Elite: Think Like an Athlete, Succeed Like a Champion, and it is a pretty awesome read. We actually have a lucky door prize going out to someone who is listening tonight. So a copy of that will be up for grabs. And she's also got her new book, In the Grandstands, being released this year. So congratulations on that, Joe. That's really exciting.
Thank you, Connor. Thank you for that, and for including me as part of the panel this evening. As you said, I've been fortunate that a little bit different to James, I guess, in some ways, that predominantly I think my client base, if I think about it over the last sort of 30 years, has been probably just a little bit more male than female. It's probably about 60-40, but it's obviously different demographic to what James is seeing. And I think if I think in that first half of my career, probably a lot of the focus, there was a little bit of uncertainty because my background's psychology, you know, a lot of hesitation and reservation about what psychology might be. And I've really seen a generational shift in the years that I've been working around not only a better understanding about what psychology is and what it offers, but almost a willingness to engage with it. So I think what works in the space that I'm working in now, and I'm particularly seeing that in the Defence Forces as well, is that when you have that well-being focus around health, I think that people really engage with that, and I think that's a really helpful way to look at it. And I guess the second part that I would add to that is, in this second half of my career, I guess I've also had a very personal interest in men's health as well, because Joe and I have two teenage sons who are 13 and 17. So obviously in raising them and prioritising their health and well-being, that's been obviously a very important focus for us as well.
Absolutely. Awesome. Great answer. All right. Over to Shane then.
Perfect. All right. So we're just going to go through individually and ask some questions, but I'm also, if any panelist wants to butt in at any time, please do. I like to have, you know, open and honest conversations. So if anyone has anything further they want to ask or agree or disagree, please do so. But then at the end of some of these questions, I'd be good to have a bit more of an open conversation if any of you guys have any questions to ask each other as well. So Richard, I'm going to stick with you if that's all right, mate.
Yeah, absolutely, Shane.
Perfect. So just first thing I was looking at is just how have you managed your athletes' health and well-being during this sort of COVID forced break?
Yeah, good question. Look, it was a bit of a shock for them, particularly a couple of my older boys. Olympics being shifted another year. Well, all going well, another year.
Yes.
So just really sitting down with them and talking that through, and they were upset initially, but it just took a little bit to work through that and reset the goals. And of course, we're back in the pool now training. But yeah, we just stayed in touch. You know, some went home to Toowoomba and Melbourne and that sort of thing over the period. But yeah, just at any time reaching out a couple of times a week. I sent them training sessions to do, so we're in touch a fair bit around that. But yeah, I think it's just really, knowing they can trust you and talk to you about anything, and you know, all their goals and those sort of things shot to bits for a little bit, but they were quite happy to be open about that and then get on with it. So the group's back and happy.
Okay, great. And, you know, I guess nothing ever really goes exactly to plan, does it? As a coach, even with all your periodization and whatnot. So you might not have planned for COVID, but you've always got a plan for the unexpected.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've already had a couple of time trials with them, so just to sort of jam up a little bit, but which they've enjoyed. So it's just managing that. I think mentally, their bodies, they've come back pretty fit.
Okay.
Really, and a couple of guys did some PBs, so it was in the pool, so it wasn't too bad.
Okay, now that's good to know. It sort of leads me on to my next question in regards to, I was often say health to me often relates back to physical fitness. You know, one of the main restrictions, this is particular for you, was the pools being closed during that time. And, you know, coming from a swimming background, not being amazing, but being okay, you know, these guys are arguably doing, you know, 12, 13 sessions a week in the pool. You know, how did you alter their programs, I guess, fitness-wise, especially as you said, in regards to the Olympics only being a year away and, you know, being a peak performance for trials and then the Olympics? How did you sort of pivot to be able to, you know, for the guys to be able to spend time out of the pool?
Yeah, look, most had access to the water on the Gold Coast, so we did a bit of ocean swimming and Tally Creek, etc. So we just sort of factored in a few days a week. Around that, we had some good dryland workouts for them, and nothing too hard and fast. Just the first couple of weeks, just as they got over the initial shock of it. So sort of a bit of assistance there with my S&C coach, and just sort of mixing it up a little. With their conditioning and making use of whatever weights and spin bikes they had. But yeah, you know, just a lot of them went surfing, and of course, I think a lot of them didn't want to overdo it in any particular area, and it wasn't too hard on their back either about having to do this or X amount of sessions a week. We just initially, and then we just started to build on that. After a few weeks, and we sort of joined in a couple of sessions together on Zoom, sort of workouts, just to bring the group together, which was good. Nice. And we can go in pairs. We sort of did that as well, a couple of runs with them, and through Burley Hill, which is always tough, as you know.
Beautiful.
A few loops through there.
I love that run.
Yeah, that's right. Now the ones that didn't have water, well, they just again just stuck to the dryland training and just watched their nutrition and the mental state, and as I said, they've come back, you know, pretty happy and ready to go.
Yeah. So I guess on that, like, as you said, if some of them have come back in, you know, pretty good nick, has that sort of made you, I guess, sit back a little bit and go, is there other ways for us to lead our programming if, you know, it doesn't impact them that greatly? Yeah,
it does challenge that. I think you sort of have your tried and true training and philosophies, which I do stick to for the most part, but it has it's sort of opened my eyes to a few alternatives as well, and how to prepare them, and just the patience around that. So it's taught me a few things also, but I generally know how to get them ready for whatever meet's coming up, which is hard to know when that is, but we have a bit of an outline, and just as long as we're ready to roll when that comes around, and they believe that, then we're good to go.
Okay, perfect. All right. Being a swimmer arguably allows, you know, more thinking time than most other professional sports due to the, for lack of a better way to put it, the monotony of following the black line. Do you find this has a positive or negative effect on, you know, your male athletes, you know, in regards to that men's health and mental health side of things?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it can be monotonous for them, particularly in that aerobic phase. They don't really like too much, but it's just making it fun too. So that's just part of knowing the personalities, knowing your athletes well, and not talking them through it. But I mean, it's just I think. Outside of that, really, is that they have a good balance around their university life and just whatever they do as young blokes, I guess. Just keeping a nice balance there, and that they know that's a good thing and that's quite okay. You know, just because it is arduous. The work's hard, and twice a day and in the gym as well. So they know. I believe that also have a little bit of balance, and they can talk to me about it any time if it's an issue. But generally they're pretty good. You know, I'm always pretty energetic in the morning. First thing, I'm up very early, and I think that's part of it, applying a lot of energy and when they're a little bit down from the hard work. But yeah, that's how. Yeah, I don't know if it affects them too much. They're just so keen, I think, to get the results, and they're around their mates as well. Even though it's in the pool, it's an individual sport. It's very much about that group as well, the dynamic.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good. Perfect. That's having some nice segues into my next question here. Okay. So outside of, I guess, if you look at it from a swimming team perspective, so outside of relays and being a member of Bond or being a member of the Aussie team, I know there is a lot of camaraderie in that, but swimming is still a very individual sport in nature. And I guess filled with pressure and dealing with the highs and the lows. How do you find this added individual pressure impacts the male athletes? I guess both during peak fitness, coming into an Olympic year, and into retirement as well.
Yeah, look, I think it does. I mean, it affects each individual a little bit differently, I suppose. But it's more about that momentum, I think, coming in to the Olympic year, and just their beliefs around the training background, and just staying on top of those sort of things, I think is very important. It's sort of they feel they got momentum, and they can handle things a lot better. It's just putting things into perspective, I suppose. And I know they believe Australia thinks they need to get a certain amount of gold medals or wins, but I think really essentially everyone just wants to see them go well and enjoy it. And it's just selling that to them, and it's their game. Now, I know it's individual, but they do love being part of the team, and really it's just getting the best from themselves. So as long as I'm trying to help them do that, and they feel like they are, then that's a great thing. But yeah, it's just managing it each day. You're trying to coach them, but it's a little bit of management there too.
Yeah, perfect.
Day in, day out.
Yeah, and I guess following on and into, I guess that transition into retirement.
Yeah, that's you can sort of see it coming. I think.
Yeah.
A year or two out, or a season or two out. But I think these days, like you said about the guys have said about well-being, and we have that on board with Swimming Australia now. And I think it's our job as the coach mainly. We're around them all the time. So, but a lot of them have university studies and a lot of things on the horizon they want to get into. So whilst it doesn't distract them from their training, I think they're doing a good job of that for what they know they're going to move on to later on. And even though no one's really 100% certain, but I think they've got a fair idea, and they sort of, I think it's a little bit different to maybe the old days.
Yeah. Okay.
What's next, So
Yeah, perfect.
It's good pathways there.
All right. Thanks.
Oh, good.
You're off the hook now for a bit.
Nah.
All right. Moving on, James. You're next, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. So I wanted to take a little bit of a different approach. So I guess, what role do you think pharmaceuticals have in managing men's health overall?
Yeah, so I think men are probably, they don't use pharmaceuticals probably as frequently as women comparative, but certainly in things like heart disease, you see men sort of doing all the, they're the ones taking a lot of the pharmaceuticals, sort of heart disease related. And I'd say like another area that I'd sort of see commonly would be guys that are just sort of happy to take painkillers and get on with it and sort of push through the pain. And maybe, as you'd see, I don't know, sometimes they're less willing to do all the sort of rehab or things that they need to do compared to just sort of plodding on. Yeah, so that's probably where I'd see most of it coming about, yeah.
Okay. So do you find, sort of following on, do you find men are a little bit reluctant to take some of this, take pharmaceuticals or pharmaceutical type advice because it almost admits, sometimes that I was thinking that it almost admits that we need help? Yeah,
I think, sort of as Joe was saying, it has changed a little bit. Certainly when I first started in my career, I think there was a lot more stigma or sort of blokiness where guys were reluctant to admit they'd have problems. And but I think it's changing. You see more and more guys actively engaging in their sort of healthcare. And just even things like you'll often see, the the wife or the matriarch of the family that is usually I suppose the caregiver and the health decision maker for the family. You see a lot of guys, they'll often come and see me, and their wives will sit there and tell me all the things that are going on, as opposed to the guy speaking up, or the wife might say, oh look, my husband has a lot of bloating and gas. And he goes, oh, not really, I don't think so. And then sort of, oh, now that you mention it, yeah, I do actually. So I guess there's like we sort of said earlier with that health awareness and things like that. But I think once men understand, that it's not a sign of weakness and things like that, they're usually on board, and you're silly not, to ignore the fact that you can change it or be better. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Well, no, it's good to hear.
That's good, James. That actually answered one of our questions from one of the people that were attending as well. So I was going to leave it for Dr. Joe, but you answered it pretty well there. So, so it's a good answer.
So, James, how do you weigh up, I guess, some of those long-term, some of the side effects from long-term pharmaceutical use, addiction versus, and, the other effects versus that short-term requirements, and I guess in and around personality types as well, with the different people you do see in the clinic. How do you manage your advice in that regards?
Yeah, well, I suppose I've kind of jumped the other side of the fence now, where most people see me because they're wanting to get off medicines or medications. They sort of see that it's not a long-term solution or something that they're happy with, sort of pursuing forever. But I would say short-term medicines definitely have their place, and I think they're really useful. Even things like mental health, if you're in a bad spot, they can be really useful to help pull you out, to give you that breathing space to actually do some work that you need to do. But certainly a lot of people, they want to treat the root cause. They're the people that I see, and I guess that's a little bit different to when I was back in sort of exclusively doing pharmacy, where everyone was sort of just happy to just take their medication, whether they, half the time they don't even know what it does. They would say, oh yeah, I just need these pills, and because I'm told to take them, and that's why I do it. But in terms of addiction, you do see people getting addicted to painkillers and those types of medicines quite commonly. And I guess that's just because they haven't really found out other alternatives or options. And the way the body works is it kind of, if you're not treating the sort of root cause of the pain, it keeps climbing, and they sort of keep chasing it, and then they become, not only physically but chemically dependent on them as well.
Okay. Yeah, no, good answer. So, you're a keen CrossFitter.
Yes.
If competition plays a large role in that men's.
Yes. Yeah. So I'd say CrossFit's very, very competitive, and that's where I guess that's where, well, again, there's probably a little bit of a bias towards people that actively engaged in their health. But a lot of the guys at CrossFit are very competitive, and I think anyone that does CrossFit is competitive. You're always working out next to someone, and even though it's all friendly, you still kind of like look at people's scores that they put up, or see where they sort of finish. And I guess it's a very motivating way to sort of check your progress and see how you sort of perform. And I think, men in particular are very competitive, and I think women aren't as open or as honest about it, but from talking to my wife and some of the girls, they're pretty competitive too.
Okay, interesting. All right. Now, last one. You're sort of very holistic in your approach to health, and sort of, as you alluded to before, like that's may have progressed or changed or advanced over the years. Can you expand on what sort of that multifaceted approach, how it can work and how it gets best results, and what it sort of entails from your perspective?
Yeah, sure. So I suppose people are now understanding that, the root cause of a disease or an illness is what really needs to be addressed. And again, like we're talking about with, say the use of pharmaceuticals, a lot of people are understanding that they're more of a Band-Aid type thing. And so they're wanting to sort of move away from that. And that's where, that multifaceted or multidisciplinary approach is really, really powerful. Most of people's, problems can be fixed with diet and exercise and doing the little things, whether it be meditation or, psychology. And there's so much power in that. When you look at just about any disease state, I think it comes back to those basics, and the multifaceted approach really underpins that and addresses that. And certainly, the things that I see, it's just talking to people and highlighting to them some of the things that they can change, and then understanding that the impact of that has. Even things as simple as sleep. People just overlook how important sleep is, but it's the small things that we kind of just don't consider, and the impact that they have. And again, another simple one is sunshine and vitamin D has a massive impact on mood and energy and immune system. And half the time, I guess, the better I get at what I do, the more simple it becomes. We just start looking at the basics that people aren't aware of and the relationships that it has. And, as movement, how powerful is movement? Getting people active and engaged. And that's where, I guess, the true power of a multifaceted approach works. And I think people are engaging with that, and they see the power in it.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good answer. Hey, if we could all sleep more, exercise more, eat healthier, keep a well-balanced lifestyle. Yeah, it's great. I love it. Sometimes harder to do than what it sounds, but yeah, no, awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time, James. Connor, moving over to you, good sir.
All right, well, I'm going to run a bit of a Big Joe, Little Joe, husband-wife tandem here. So, Big Joe, first question for you, mate. How, I guess you've got two really different sort of populations that you deal with in your day-to-day activities. You've got, I guess, I don't know how much directly you would deal with the Cowboys. So you've got the Cowboys side of things, and then this is probably going to come out the wrong way, but you've got a bunch of accountants on the other side. So you've got a bunch of very active people, and then a bunch of people that tend to sit for a lot of the day. How do you find the difference in trying to manage these two groups of people? I think you've got your mute on, Joe. I think you got to turn your sound on.
Thanks, Connor, and that's a rookie error on Zoom. Given that I'm on at about 25 to 30 hours a week, that's unforgivable. But look, you're absolutely right. There is a lot of similarities between accountants, which is what I think the answer or the question you're asking. The similarities between accounting profession and football. And there's a lot of similarities, in the way that we manage both of those. At the end of the day, yes, football is, I think, to James and Richard's earlier point, and even Dave's, there's a lot of challenges. It's very focused on a physical, confrontational, high-impact sport. But for me, when we're looking at it, you're looking at staff and looking at putting measures in place and support mechanisms in place for all of your staff. Now, again, they're very different professions, of course, and you have very different challenges, but in ways they're very similar. If I talk about, rather than the physical, the well-being and the emotional aspects of that, confidence is a very important thing, and giving any staff the confidence and level of confidence to perform their duties at a level and that they can be proud of, or ability to give them an environment where they can thrive. I think for me, that is in relation to, all professions or all pursuits is something that's really important. Obviously, putting support structures in. So at the Cowboys, obviously, we have, a high level of trainers and support staff and physios and medical staff that support on the field and the physical attributes of, what's required to be a high-performance athlete. And obviously, they're very different to the accounting profession. But again, having a good, physical well-being also then rolls into your mental well-being and mental health, which in the long term also plays into, how you perceive yourself and how you determine success, or how, you look at success in life. So, there are some similarities. Obviously, there's the obvious disparities or differences, but there are certainly a lot of similarities.
No, I think that's an important point that you made about the environment as well. And I'm sure both Dave and Richard, and actually pretty much everyone on this would agree with that, but making sure that you can create an environment where people can thrive. So no, that's a really good point. And Dr. Joe, what do you, I guess on that, once again, we're looking at a sedentary lifestyle versus an extremely active, paid to exercise lifestyle. What do you see as the links between exercise and mental health?
Well, there's many of them. I actually put a post up about that very topic today up on my social media, because the physical benefits of physical activity are obvious, but what we do know is that when it comes to people's overall well-being, being engaged in physical activity, being involved in exercise, being involved in sport or competitive sport, whichever one of those that you might choose, the flow-on effects of that in terms of our mental health is incredibly important. And when we look at things like stress levels, when we look at our energy levels, I mean, we've all been together through this incredible worldwide event. And we get challenged all the time. It's never anything like this, but being up in North Queensland, we had the floods just over a year ago. We get cyclones. We've had the bushfires through Australia, and what we know with adversity is it is about what happens to us, but it's even more so about how we then respond to that and how we then cope and manage that. And what we know is that one of the strategies that can really be beneficial for us in terms of our overall well-being is about how we look after our physical health. And so we see flow-on effects in terms of, Joe mentioned confidence. There's been a few messages there about balance and so forth. So we know that for people who are perhaps not elite performers in terms of the sporting sense, we know that physical activity has a really important place in terms of contributing to our overall well-being. And that's certainly something I've spent, I work at the elite end, but I also work with general people as well. And so what you find is that when people can put a priority on their physical health and then, of course, their overall general health, then that flows on and benefits. It's a bit like a stone in a pond, and it ripples out and it affects, and mental health is definitely a contributing factor to that.
Yeah, fantastic. And that actually rolls into one of the questions from one of our attendees. David's asked if we're advocating that outlier or successful high performance athletes are therefore psychologically balanced and healthy. What are your thoughts on that, Joe?
If I tell you that one of the chapters in the book is called Life Balance BS, it might actually give you a little bit of a guide into that. I mean, I think that it really it's going to depend. It's a great question because it depends on how you're going to define balance. What does balance actually look like? And so that's where the variation lies, and then that kind of flows on to how it affects the answer to that question. But I do think that at the pointy end of sport, of music, of the performing arts, of business, whatever it is, I think it's quite challenging to be at that upper end and have all your ducks in a row. But I think it's not that we can't have everything, but I don't think you can have it all at once. And I think that if you pretend to or try to, then that's when you come unstuck. So I think we need to understand that whatever our pursuits are in our lives, all the time that we're working towards that goal, we're making choices about other goals. Don Bradman was an incredible cricket player, no doubt there at all, but I've never heard about what he was like at table tennis or swimming, So, he had to prioritise and work towards one particular goal. And I think for any of us, if we're striving in a particular area of our lives, I'll be very interested to hear what the other panellists say about this. They might disagree with me, but I think it's challenging to have a balanced life, as I would define it, if you're seeking excellence in one area. That being said, I do think it's possible for people to say, you know what, I actually don't want to be the best in the world at such and such. And so you might have a whole range of the domains of your life where you try as best as you can to do the things that are important to you. And I think that ultimately is what's going to be important.
Yeah, fantastic. No, that's a really good point. Thank you. And hopefully that answers your question there, David. Now, Big Joe, I got another one for you. So I read your resume or your CV and I went, wow, this is a busy man. He's got a lot of hats on at once. I guess outside that, how do you manage your own mental health and well-being? Okay, how do you manage your health well enough to be able to give, I guess, the best support to all of your staff in a number of different areas?
Yeah, thanks, Connor. And I guess just touching on some of the things that Joe just indicated there, I think it's, from a mental health point of view, the biggest challenge in our industry is exactly that, is it's not so much the physical challenges that we have, even though, as you pointed out, the sedentary lifestyle of our profession. But for me, it's routine. It's about treating yourself and giving yourself permission as you do a lot of the other, whether it be businesses, clients, or your other positions. So what that means might be, 5:30 every afternoon I train, and James indicated CrossFit is a competitive sport, and that's something that I really enjoy and do that. So from that point of view, for me, it's about creating an environment and a routine, creating a bit of mateship and team environment that you can detach from the challenges of the day and go and train and put it out there and still at least be a little bit competitive and challenge yourself. So for me, it's certainly about routine, and I think you find it's it's a bit contagious. So even within our own family group, the older that we get, I think the more we do engage with physical activity. If I go back and have a look at our parents and the level of physical engagement, 10, 15, 20 years ago compared to someone in our age group at the moment, there's certainly, in our cohort of friends, a strong participation in all sorts of, physical activity. And I think that's so important to then enable you to go to your day-to-day job and engage and support you in doing that. Connor?
Fantastic. Good answer. And the last one I've got should be a pretty fun one for you, Joe. So how hard do you find it to form your own opinions and strategies on men's health when your wife works as a professional psychologist?
Well, I thought long and hard about the answer to this question, Connor, before you asked me, and I thought about the sort of issues and how I should answer this. And then I came to the realisation, I just went and asked my wife what I should answer, or how I should answer it. But look, to that point again, I think it comes back to surrounding yourself with people and structures and supportive structures that are going to be supportive, build up your confidence, whether it be, whether you be playing front row on a footy team or whether you be, a graduate accountant. I think confidence is something that we all need, and I think we can all contribute to supporting others achieve their goals, and that's encouragement, confidence, giving them the ability to succeed in whatever your pursuit is. And I think that's probably, for me, something that Jo does help and support me in. Her profession is such that, it's whether it be sport, whether it be business, whether it be whatever, endeavour, we're all human beings, and our mental state of mind has a lot to do with how we perform, as much as our physical. So, to that point, we do use Jo a lot not only in our business and with our staff and our team, but for a lot of our clients. So we really do tie. In fact, part of our business model is, stepping outside the accounting profession and looking at how we can value add in both accounting, financial planning, business, how we can culminate or use strategies that Jo has to support business.
Fantastic. Oh, great answer. I'm going to hand over to Shane now just to ask some questions of Dave, because I wouldn't mind hearing his opinion from the Storm's point of view versus the Cowboys' point of view here. So I'll hand over to Shane to ask his questions and we'll go from there.
Perfect. Thank you, Connor. Dave, been waiting there in the background, eager, ready to go. Can you discuss some of the challenges you have of, managing the mental health of professional footballers, especially given some of the widely publicised issues of depression amongst certain players in the league? What are those challenges, and how do you go about trying to solve them, or give them the attention they deserve?
Yeah, thanks, Shane. I'm not sure we're going to solve them all today, but certainly I know from our end that, as I said at the outset, we want to look at well-rounded athletes, not just people who are looked at, once they put the jersey on, they run out, they're superhuman in the day rust, and the big Cowboys off field as well. And for a lot of these guys, they're probably not geared up for that role and that responsibility. So that comes with a level of understanding. Certainly, for us, it starts at the people that we appoint within the club. And I'm sure Cowboys are no different, as many other clubs are, that we want to make sure that we've got the right structures and systems in place to support these people through. But likewise, we want to make sure we bring the right people in that can enhance our culture, and that, I think someone mentioned it before, will not just survive but thrive. I look at a lot of young men and a lot of young women in female sports that come into systems and just aren't given the tools to succeed. Richard on the line there as a coach of an individual sport. I remember Matt Shervington telling me that sporting clubs or sporting organisations are really great at giving people the skills and the tools to climb Everest, but that's only part of the battle. You still got to get down from it. And I think that was really quite profound from Shervo to share that. That it's not just what they do on the field; it's also how they lived. And of course, there's a fine line there, because you don't want to pamper, you don't want to do too much. You want to provide them with that opportunity to grow and become a high performing adult, not just a high performing athlete. Certainly we've used that time through COVID as a way to try and encourage that, and to further that with our players, to certainly allow them to take ownership or greater ownership of their lives. Not that we have an oversight on that, an overreach on that, but certainly ensuring that our wellbeing staff and our psychs are doing enough and enough support without doing too much for them. There was a great opportunity for our athletes to learn a lot of skills along the way, and to be honest, I think they did. They used that time really well, which is great to see.
Yeah, good, great answer. Have you, just thinking about this on the spot at the moment, like obviously, you want high performing individuals, and you want your athletes to be good humans, for lack of a better way to put it. How have you found, I guess, recruitment over the years? Like, I've read an article about the All Blacks, and they've got a no dickhead policy. And it was a really interesting article, and if anyone's ego gets too big, or if they're not acting appropriately, we'll call on that. How much have you found where there may be an amazing player, great potential, big future, but may not be so highly regarded socially or within the opinions of the media? How does it have a big part of the decision making when you look at recruitment?
It does now, massively. It's been a real focus of ours, particularly the last sort of 5-6 years. But that's not just for players; it's also for staff, ensuring that you got the right fit. We went through a recent process where we brought new shareholders into the club, and it wasn't just about money; it was also about the right fit for the club to ensure that the club continued to thrive, which is a really, really important thing for us if you're talking about from leadership at the top. So it is because the thing about the thing about our sport is that the average income for a player with a salary cap around 10 million is about $330,000. And there's more media that cover our sport than federal politics. There's a lot of pressure. Social media is immediate. You have a bad game, there's nowhere to hide. And before Craig Bellamy talks to the players 3 days after in a review, you've probably got 300 or 3,000 or 300,000 followers. If you're Cameron Smith telling you how shit your kick was on the weekend or TV. So there's a for us, it's about giving them before they come into an environment, ensuring that they can cope with that. But that they've got the support networks and they've got the skills, and we train them up to give them the tools, as I said, to thrive, not just survive in this environment, because it is, for a lot of people, it's a fantasy world that a lot of people won't quite understand. But it also, on the other side, it gives people a lot of privilege, and it's a great honour to work in it. So, whilst you're in it, we certainly strongly encourage our players, not just on the field but off field, to make the most of that opportunity.
Yeah, good, perfect, great. Thanks for that. Okay, Melbourne Storm, definitely known to have, one of the best, if not the best, program around mental health with their athletes. Can you outline what you guys do and how you feel? It's not the fact of doing it better than another club, but how you feel, why you feel it's so highly acclaimed.
It's nice. It's nice that people feel that way. I think we certainly don't get it right all the time. I look at been in the role for 5 years. I know there's things that I'd rather, I wish I could do a few things a little bit differently. I think we've got a lot of mature heads in leadership positions now that, you talk about the All Blacks with the no dickheads policy. We certainly subscribe to that theory, but we've got those mature heads that ensure that the foundations that were set by the people that have established the clubs continue. When players first come into our organisation, they have to go on the tools for 2 weeks. So they have to, put the footy boots down and go and, use shovels and go and, do some manual labour for 2 weeks, just to give them I suppose, an understanding and appreciation that, what they've got's quite special, and, hopefully they don't take that for granted. But then we reinforce that with, support, not just for the player, but for partners, for families. We've got a lot of kids come down. I take the ownership of that responsibility seriously when the parents hand their children over to us effectively. And we've got to hopefully, we can't promise that they'll be better athletes. It's really up for them. But, we certainly can advocate that we'll develop better people. And, that comes through over investing in, tertiary education or trades. We've got a player doing their MBA here right now. We've got, players that are almost qualified builders and carpenters. We've got guys doing architecture courses. Everyone that does something off field. I think that the stats will, I'm sure Joe will reinforce that. The data that demonstrates if you do something outside of footy, you're less likely to have an off-field issue. And I think we've seen, pleasingly, touch wood, a lot less of those down here. But also we're just trying to provide an environment, as I said, that I'll keep saying that where they can thrive, not just survive. A real positive environment, and a real open environment that you can have a level of vulnerability around it. We've got Nick Maxwell, a leadership coach. We engage with a guy called Shane McKay down here who's very good. Hugh, who runs the Resilience Project, is a good friend of the club. It started through here, and certainly we're not afraid to test the status quo. Interesting here, Richard talking about the House Party app. So I'm not sure if you use the House Party app, but our guys were through that period. The one thing that I'm sure we're all feeling across businesses and sport is that there's that real detachment from each other, and as we keep working from home, that'll continue and hopefully isn't more. But people like human connection, and especially in a sporting environment. So that was a big challenge through COVID, was to try and enhance that and to ensure that they maintained a level of connection.
Yeah, great.
I'm just going to jump in quickly there. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Connor.
No, you're right. Dr. Joe's actually just got to leave. Because she's extremely busy, she's actually got to jump onto another Zoom call. So she's off. If you guys have any further questions or anything, she has just chucked up a link in the chat section there. And she's also given some resources as well for people to jump on. and have a look at. And she's also chucked her take-home message there for tonight. So if you guys have any further questions or anything for Dr. Joe, just forward them through to me, and I can get them onto her just to answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Dr. Joe.
Thanks, Dr. Joe. Great hearing from you.
Perfect. Yeah, Dave, no, I think it was really interesting how you spoke about, the family, like getting players, wives or parents. I think, the buck just can't stop with the player. You've got to really, have that extend to that close support network. And as you said, maybe that is why one of the reasons you've been so successful down there. Okay. I guess Dave, how did you guys manage your players' mental health during this period, this COVID period? What did you have to do differently? I know you mentioned the house party out there, but obviously it goes a bit deeper than that. How did you guys manage it?
Obviously a few approaches. Likewise, Richard was talking about PBs. We were surprised at the state that our players came back in from a positive perspective, came back in great shape. They've hit the ground running. I think, the question around that, what does that make you learn, is that probably pre-seasons are too long, which is, a real interesting insight off the back of that. Certainly from a mental health, encouraging them to go and learn and do some study through that period. So we provided them a whole range of resources, Harvard courses, and the like to go away and if they weren't studying at that point, to go and dive into something, and get into a routine through that period. Not slob around the house, get up and do some training in pairs. And likewise with our staff, from my management team organised, made sure that we had daily senior management meetings. It was only 30-minute meetings, but, that was really focused around, ensuring that everyone was up, didn't fall into habits around, putting your pajamas on and not getting out of them, which, everyone. But it was one of those real little things that we had to focus on. And then the next part was, I think that the beauty that the NRL and with Peter V'landys, what he did was he set a date. Now that had some challenges commercially around, broadcast discussions, but look, what it did, it provided with everyone with a goal and with a target. So from a view around getting fit, or a mental health perspective around knowing when the end date would be, sports are very, it is a date driven business. You're always working on the next training session, or the next game, or the next grand final, the next Olympics, and for us, having that date there was really important, because it provided some, I suppose, some purpose and some energy and accountability on these guys to do that, and not just on field, but the staff as well. So that helped our work there, Shane.
Yeah, great. Actually, on that, Richard, is there a date for the Olympics next year?
Yeah, Shane, it's basically 1 year. Yeah, 1 year later. So I think it's around the 25th of July. Same as this year, all going well. So yeah, we have a few dates around other competitions like Australian short course and state championships and things like that. The ISL, it's been a big winner. So late last year, was supposed to go ahead in October, November, but we're not sure about that, obviously, with international borders. We've got a few things in place just to give the athletes a bit of a few sort of goals there, but see how we go.
Yeah, good. No, I was just interested whether there was a date. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, well, Dave's right. It's you work backwards from those dates, and the athletes are very much programmed to that. So it's a difficult thing to work around sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Shane, I got one part on that just for it's kind of for Dave, Joe, and Richard, I guess, but I think it'd be pretty useful for me, you, and James to hear the answer. Dave, what do you think? Is that a similar sort of process that you would use if you had an injured player? Would you try and encourage them to try and engage in study? Like obviously with COVID, everyone was off. So that's completely different when no one's playing sport. But when you've got a group of blokes playing sport and then one guy out for the season or something, for example, how do you deal with them specifically instead? You try and keep them involved? You find something else for them?
I think from one thing I've seen over the last few years is that, there's always our welfare and our psych staff normally spend about 95% of their time on about 5% of your players, and whether they're players that are at risk or particularly for us, injured players. And certainly that's the case in when it comes to an injured player, is that overinvestment in those services. There's been a lot spoken about our that gets spoken about our pre-seasons down here, and they're real tough. But I can assure you that the players mentally go through so much more when they're coming back from a knee or a shoulder and they're training in the gym by themselves. There might be one or two other guys, and they really build close rapport and close relationships, but it's not the same with their core purpose and being out on the track with the full squad. So, over investing in those guys in that period, because they are at risk, and ensuring that we're making sure that they're keeping their minds active and seeking the support and providing that where it's needed.
Great. So we sort of had James and Joe both, use CrossFit as an outlet and a way to, have competition. Dave and Richard, what do you guys, you obviously have to manage your, and particularly for you, Dave, you deal with a lot of different personalities in your day-to-day. How do you look after your own mental health, especially during these stressful times?
I didn't actually realise stress headaches were a thing. mental health, and the period, I reckon for about 2 weeks running after our first game, I kept on getting these headaches, and I thought when I was dying, but I actually spoke to him, and he said, mate, that's a stress headache. And I'd never had one before in my whole life. So, I've always been a big advocate for running or doing some form of exercise, on a daily basis. So, I got to the point where, as opposed to, I'd do a workout in the morning, but I'd also try and go for a run in the afternoon, because it'd help relieve it from my end. So exercise has been a friend of mine for a while there, Shane.
Yeah, good. And you, Richard?
Oh yeah, look, the same as Dave. I like to go for a bit of a run, and I get into my F45 a little bit, just to, it's quite a hard workout, so it's a good way to let off steam after coaching in the morning. And hard for me to get in the pool anymore. I sort of around it so much. It's, I don't do a lot of swimming, but and you go for a surf. That's always good too with my children, and as a family, sort of, it's good to get out there for a couple of hours, and you get some good thinking done with no stress. And but I agree with Dave. You do get those stress headaches, particularly around big competitions, and you just keep charging through. But you just have to do something around it physically, for me too, to read a good Wilbur Smith book, bit of adventure. I always enjoy too. Take the mind off things. But that's it for me.
Okay.
Workouts are good.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Rich. All right. Do any of you guys have any questions for each other? I guess, we've gone through some more formalized questions, but is there anything you guys had that you wanted to ask each other whilst you can pick each other's brains in this moment?
Hey James, what's your most popular suppy for a middle-aged
Mate, it's funny you mentioned stress headaches, because I was thinking to myself, I've got just the formula for you. But probably, to be honest, we probably sell more things for stress than anything else. And I think, like we're talking about, there's so many things we can do, but certainly the best sellers for us are all of supporting the adrenal system, so stress, and we sell quite a number of herbs that actually help lower stress hormones. So I'm happy to send you a bottle, mate. And the best the best thing is it's when you talk about middle age, I presume you're talking maybe in reference to belly fat or something like that, but stress certainly and poor sleep leads to increased sort of ab fat or abdominal fat. So taking the stress herbs, mate, I think will help the midsection too.
We're all listening in.
Hope you heard that one, Shane.
Hey, that's a low dig. I too like to go for an occasional run for my mental health. Maybe I just need to do a couple more runs.
Mate, combine it with the herbs, you'll have a six pack.
Oh, great! So there's hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, go, Rick.
Oh, I'd love to come visit Dave down at the Storm, and of course Joe at the Cowboys would be great. One of these days, we come up there and do camps in Townsville, but also very interested in visiting the Storm. And I know there's a bunch of Queenslanders down there too. So you guys run a great organisation, and it'd be good to visit again, like we did with Greenie a couple of years ago, and down in Melbourne too.
We'd love to have you up here, Richard. The weather this time of year is absolutely brilliant for swimming.
Look forward to it.
Yeah, likewise, Richard. I think hopefully our guys are out of quarantine at some point soon. So
yeah,
thanks,
we
can
Dave.
visit back soon.
That'd be fantastic. Yeah, thanks, guys.
Perfect. Well, Connor, you got anything else?
No, I think we got the most of it there. That's covered a fair few topics, and hopefully we've answered everyone's questions that's asked any as well. I think we got the majority of them. If anyone else has any other ones, flick them through, and we can flick them through to the panelists. But no, thank you very much for joining us, everyone. Shane and I both said we appreciate your time. We know you guys are very busy, and we really appreciate having you on. And it's been a really good discussion.
I really appreciate being on. Thanks very much, guys. Connor, Shane, boys,
Thanks, Richard.
ladies.
Thank you, Richard.
Perfect.
Thanks, Connor and Shane, for having us. Really appreciate it, mate. Appreciate the opportunity.
Very good.
Perfect.
No
Thanks.
worries. We've recorded this session. We'll be posting it to our Facebook page as well after tonight. If anyone wants to go back and watch it, or if anyone wasn't able to make it and they want to pass it on to their friends, it will be on our Facebook page at the Physio Movement. So if you guys have any more questions or anything, feel free to flick them through to the email that you registered through.
Keep up the great work, guys. Fantastic.
Perfect. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers. Bye now.